City, eh, Sean?
All right, Tucker, great show as always. Welcome to Hannity. And in fact, we'll examine the 2016 Clinton server investigation. This is big news tonight. A huge fight breaking out earlier today between the DOJ, Rod Rosenstein, after documents promised to Congress were supposed to be delivered early this morning. They weren't handed over. Now, why were these documents not released? And just as we predicted, redact, delay, bury some important IG findings. Now, also tonight, we have brand new developments surrounding President Trump's upcoming historic summit with Kim Jong-un. Many around the world are tonight hopeful that the United States of America could, in fact, be inching closer to peace on the Korean Peninsula. And meanwhile, the mainstream media in this country demanding to know why the head of the Mueller investigation has not recused himself, given his numerous conflicts of interest, including his key role in that decision to fire James Comey. He's witness number one in that case. And of course, he was the person that signed off on
that President Trump will not stand for a bad deal.
Here we are, only days away from diplomatic progress the former President Obama frankly only dreamed of. The majority of Americans, how are they responding? Overwhelmingly now supporting the president's upcoming summit. Now, all of this after the mainstream media doubted, they were fear-mongering, talks of nuclear war. And in a sad way, I think many, because they don't like President Trump and they want the Democrats to win, actually even rooting against the president's success here. That's sad for the country. Take a look.
The idea of a nuclear showdown with North Korea keeps you up at night? I would recommend deleting your Twitter app.
He is not merely being cavalier with a threat about nuclear war. He's being cavalier in a way that makes him seem demented.
These are the messages from a person who is not well, from a leader who is not fit for office.
President Trump is goading Kim Jong-un to test a nuclear missile again, to prove its reliability, to show him wrong. And fundamentally, I think it comes across as two kindergartners who are jostling each other, except that each has nuclear weapons.
Well, here's
too late after 100,000 Americans die.
after a nuclear holocaust.
Or after a million die in Seattle.
And that's where we are. This is not an exaggeration.
Trump's comments about nuclear weapons have experts worried he could literally inadvertently trigger a catastrophe.
Wow, could trigger a catastrophe. Conspiracy theory over there. All right, these nuclear tests so far, let's go through this. No more missiles being fired over Japan. Guam's not being threatened. The region's not being threatened. Oh, we do have 3 American hostages. Fake news. We watch Kim
who spoke to Donald Trump recently about life in the White House. And Donald Trump's biggest complaint was that he's not allowed to watch porn in the White House. So there you go. There's a little bit of news for you. He's upset that he can't watch porn in the White House.
I bet they have those, 1-900 numbers blocked too, which must be a disappointment.
I'm not really sure, but it just sort of flies in the face of all of this.
Andy Lack, are you proud of that? Is this what is so-called news over there, 30 Rock? This is so insane, honestly, I can't even bother. All right, let's go to our third and almost unbelievable example of fake news. It does involve yours truly. Last night, right here on this program, yesterday on my radio show, I made what are obviously sarcastic remarks highlighting a clear double standard as it relates to our justice system. Equal justice under the law, equal application of our nation's laws. And I was talking about Hillary Clinton and comparing her and what she did to those that have been targeted by Mueller's witch hunt, as Mueller is requesting everybody's phones. How interesting. Watch this. Maybe Mueller's witnesses, I don't know. If I advised them to follow Hillary Clinton's lead, delete all your emails, and then acid wash the emails and the hard drives on the phones, then take your phones and bash them with a hammer into little itsy bitsy pieces, use bleach bit, remove the SIM cards, and then take the pieces and hand it over to Robert Mueller and say, Hillary Rodham Clinton, this is equal justice under the law. How do you think that would work out for everybody who Mueller's demanding their phones of tonight? Now, I'm certain the result would not be the same as Hillary's. Mueller wants everyone's cell phones. My advice to them, not really, kidding, bad advice, would be follow Hillary's, lead. Not really, kidding, bad advice. And I said, if, words actually matter, if I told them. Now, believe it or not, the insane left-wing media in this country, headline after headline, they picked up those comments. They're so dumb and gullible, and had a full-on, the only thing I can describe as a fake news freakout. Look at Newsweek. Sean Hannity's advice to Mueller witnesses: bash your phones with a hammer. Rolling Stone went with the headline: Galaxy Brain Sean Hannity Mueller targets to smash their cell phones. From the Business Insider, Sean Hannity suggests Mueller probe witnesses should destroy their evidence. And more fake news from the Daily Kos. Sean Hannity breaks the law on TV, telling Mueller probe witnesses to destroy evidence. And there's Vanity Fair. It goes on and on. Trump, Sean Hannity, Trump associates, you're not obstructing justice hard enough. The liberal Daily Beast, Sean Hannity, to witnesses of Mueller probe. Bash your phones into pieces. GQ, they got into the game. Sean Hannity encourages Mueller witnesses to do even more crimes than they may have already committed. And I can go on, frankly, for another 20 minutes here. But the hysteria gets even worse. Let's take a look at how Andy Lack's network handled this.
Sean Hannity is now literally telling potential witnesses and subjects in the Mueller probe to destroy the evidence and hammer their phones into pieces. Now, Hannity's defenders may call that sarcasm or poetic license, but words are words. Sean Hannity lives off his words, and we all know they have a huge impact. If anyone actually does what Sean Hannity says there, they'd be committing a crime.
What Sean Hannity admitted to and actually was enticing people to do and asking them to do was to destroy evidence, which is a violation of the witness tampering statute.
No responsible person on television, no responsible so-called journalist should be advocating for people to destroy evidence in a serious federal investigation. I don't think that we'll see him prosecuted. Federal prosecutors give people a very wide berth on First Amendment-related conduct. And so unless there's something more specific to link it up, I think that this will be what we often categorize as awful but lawful conduct.
Listen, if he's out there advocating for Mueller's witnesses to obstruct justice, then maybe Mueller should speak to him and ask him, where'd the idea come from? Have you spoken to the president about this? Did the president tell you to say this?
Knowing Mueller, I think he's not going to light that fire under someone who gets free airtime every day. But one angle would be to say, yeah, look, I'm going to a judge, and I'm going to have you cease and desist this activity on national television. Secondly, I want to talk to you and see if Trump has gotten this idea from you or vice versa.
Yeah, words matter. If I advise them, oh, and by the way, it's really dumb. It's not going to work out well for you. You know, the great irony in all of this is that they're more angry that I was basically saying that everything, Hillary Clinton did it all. She did every bit of it. And by the way, I love the idea. I'd actually like to meet Robert Mueller's Mary Brandon Democratic donors. I'd like to meet Andrew Weissman. I'd like to meet the guy that lost to the Supreme Court 9-0, put innocent people in jail for a year to be overturned by the Fifth Circuit, that was excoriated by judges not once but twice for withholding exculpatory evidence and costing tens of thousands of people jobs. I have questions for him. I have questions for Jeannie Ray. I have questions for Bob Mueller. Call me. Now, let's get this straight. The mainstream media would put me under investigation, lock me up, for merely highlighting in an obviously sarcastic way the double standard in what I have been pointing out, our two-tier justice system. And these same people didn't get the fact that Hillary had actually done all of that. She wiped away, acid-washed her hard drive, deleted 33,000 emails that were subpoenaed. She had an aide smashing phones with a hammer and lied about all of it. That actually happened. They did all of this. Are you really that dumb? Please tell me it's not true. Now, you would think one under Mueller's thumb would be able to get away with that. Okay, just to be clear, If Robert Mueller asks for your phone, don't do what Hillary did. As I said last night, it's not going to end well for you. You won't get the same treatment, which was the point of it. Now, the media, when you think they hit a new low, they just dig and dig and dig. You can't believe this. You can't make it up. All right, one more quick news story here that the media probably hates to cover. The president granting clemency. This is a beautiful story. The woman's name is Alice Johnson, great-grandmother, sentenced to life in prison for one non-violent drug crime. Okay? She's 20-some-odd years in jail. Her first day of freedom in 20 years. She thanks the president. Moments ago, she spoke with our own Martha McCallum. Take a look.
The only way that I was able to make it through that time, and this is the truth, was my faith in God. I knew that one day He was going to bring me out. And I lived my life with an eye toward one day walking out of those doors a free woman. And the day that I got the news that President Trump had granted my clemency and given me a second chance in life was the best day of my life.
God, I wish you the best. And you know what? I think there's more of these cases we can find. Give people second chances. I believe in them. Joining us now, author of the upcoming bestseller, The Russia Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton Framed Donald Trump. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Okay, he's writing a book. I just found out tonight this is going to be a bestseller, too. They're going to be fighting against each other. The case against impeaching Trump. Famed Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz. Actually, I think the books are complementary. I would like to do events with both of you and book signings. And I think we could do like an hour debate and then you guys sign books and I have a beer.
It's a deal. That would be great. Happy to do it.
All right. Let's go. First, I got to ask you about this whole issue with me. Professor Dershowitz, you did know that I was being sarcastic.
First of all, you had a perfect constitutional right to make the comparison. I may not agree with it, but you have the right to make the comparison with Hillary Clinton. That's a constitutionally protected argument. Obviously, you did it in a sense of sarcasm, saying, look at what she did. Hey, but you won't get away with it if you don't do it. It is absurd. It is ridiculous to see the media.
I have the two best lawyers that will take me on as a client right here. I think I'm pretty safe.
You wouldn't need us.
I know.
I could find you a first-year student who would win that case.
How did these people get on air? It's crazy.
Well,
right.
I suspect that the people who were criticizing you never actually listened to what it is you were saying. I saw this clip for the first time you just played of some guy saying a cease and desist order ought to be had against you. If that guy's a lawyer, he's as dumb as a bucket of hair. Look, the U.S. Supreme Court said in 1988 so famously that satire and parody is protected speech. Sarcasm does not constitute inciting a crime. Those people who are criticizing you for that have no idea what they're talking about legally.
Everybody at home, you just saw why these books are going to be bestsellers. All right. The DOJ, there was a spy, probably two, maybe more, and you believe you're a constitutional attorney. Congress has a constitutional role in oversight, checks and balances, separation of powers. Why won't they turn the documents over?
Well, they should. Look, I'm a civil libertarian who goes back to the anti-war movement when informers were put in the anti-war movement. They were put in the Martin Luther King movement.
Martin Luther King was spied on in a horrific way.
In a horrific way.
That's right.
And so as a civil libertarian, when you put somebody in a campaign, I want to know why. I want to see the justification. Maybe there is a justification. Maybe it was business as usual. But the American public has the right to know everything about
100%.
that and make our own judgment.
Where are the civil libertarians? This is a scary time. Listen, I am as pro-law enforcement as anybody.
Yep.
I love my mother was a prison guard. My dad worked in probation. It was a big deal. All my family, many of them were police, and two made the FBI, and that was the top of the hill.
Look, I never pass a policeman in the street without thanking him.
I do the same thing.
I always do it. Firemen, policemen.
Love them.
School teachers, people who work hard to give us our protection,
risk their
education.
lives.
I want them to know I appreciate it every day of the week.
And I do the same. All right, so they won't hand it over. Then you got Rosenstein's conflicts. And I'm thinking, they promised they would hand it over, Greg. Why?
Congress has every legal and constitutional right to see these documents. Those who are seeking it actually have security clearance, the Gang of Eight. So there's no valid legal justification for withholding it. And yet, the Department of Justice and the FBI have a long and distinguished record over the last year of concealing evidence, redacting records under national security terms. And then when we find out when they're unsealed, There was no such thing.
What I would recommend, however, is for Congress to immediately write to the Justice Department and say, do not destroy a single draft. We want to see what the original looked like. We want to see every change. We want to know who changed it, why it was changed, and when it was changed.
And the Inspector General would have it.
You cannot trust a briefing, as Trey Gowdy seemed to say. They're just telling you what they can get away with, the bare minimum. You have to see the documents themselves.
I've got to go, but your books are so complimentary, and I'm thinking out of the box in the moment here. I would love to do an event with both of you. I think it would be good for the country. When we come back, huge news. Sarah Carter will break it next, and also Congressman Ron DeSantis. Stay right there.
Plus.
All right, joining us now, a lot of breaking news tonight. Florida Congressman Ron DeSantis, by the way, I'm hoping will be the next governor of the great state of Florida, the Sunshine State. Full disclosure for you dopes over at MSNBC and Fox News contributor Sarah Carter. Sarah, let's start with you. So I was speaking with you last night, and we were speaking to other people, and we were both working our sources. And then again this morning at 7 o'clock, there was supposed to be released documents from the DOJ early in the morning, and then they pulled them back. What happened?
Absolutely. I mean, the DOJ failed to mention that when they issued a press release last night, Sean, after midnight, stating that they would turn over documents next week, or at least allow Congress to review documents next week, either Monday or Tuesday, and ask more questions about the information that they had requested on April 24th, which was a specific documentation by the House Intelligence Committee that would basically shed light on the entire Russia investigation. It's these documents that the DOJ and the FBI are refusing to turn over to lawmakers. And this is significant. They had battled with them on May 24th. Remember that meeting that they had where the DOJ and FBI were supposed to share documents with Nunes and Representative Trey Gowdy and others, and they did not. They, in fact, told them that they would not share those documents with investigators on their committee. So this has been a back and forth battle. They refused to turn them over this morning, instead issuing a press release late last night that nobody was aware of except for the reporters. But the congressional members were left in the dark. They headed to Capitol Hill. They were waiting for the documents, and once again, they weren't there.
All right, I got some breaking news, if I can throw this at you, Congressman. This is in the New York Times. Federal law enforcement, the headline is, Justice Department seizes Times reporters' email and phone records in leak investigation. Federal law enforcement officials secretly seizing a year's worth of New York Times reporters' phone and email records this year in an investigation of classified information leaks. Excuse me. Don't we have a First Amendment here? By the way, I never thought I'd be defending the New York Times. They do suck. But wait a minute. They don't have a right to this reporter's notes, this reporter's records. We do. Aren't they allowed to protect their sources? Do we have freedom of press? This sounds scary to me. What's your reaction?
Well, it's also against the backdrop, Sean. Nobody has been prosecuted who's actually done leaking since this administration took over. I mean, remember, Michael Flynn, that intercept was a FISA intercept. That was leaked gratuitously by somebody, probably an Obama holdover. There have been a cascade of leaks, and nobody has been held accountable for any of those things. So I need more information about what exactly is happening here. I know that there's a former staffer on the Senate Intelligence Committee that is probably going to be indicted. I'm not sure if it was working for a Democrat or a Republican, although I have my guess. But at the end of the day, you've had a series of leaks and no accountability up to this point.
I will tell you, news media, and they write this in the Times piece, consider the idea of mining a journalist's records for sources a massive intrusion into the First Amendment. Sarah Carter, we worked sources last night, and it's none of their business who we talk to, who you talk to, who I talk to. Mueller doesn't have a right to this information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that when we look at overall, what's been happening here, look, James Clapper has now been outed pretty much as someone who the Congress believes had leaked information to CNN. We know that the president's conversations, private conversations, were leaked to the media. But that does not give the right for the DOJ to start mining reporters' telephone numbers reporters' information to try to find out who was the leaker. I mean, I think they pretty much know where the leaks are coming from. Give polygraphs. I mean, if they're leaking highly classified
Maybe they should
information.
look at their own office.
That's right. Like Mike Flynn, maybe give some polygraphs and find out who was leaking inside the DOJ or inside the FBI or inside the administration as to these highly classified leaks.
This is huge news here because, and we're just putting this together. The New York Times, even their own leadership is commenting on this. Maybe the New York Times, Congressman DeSantis, maybe they'll now realize people like Sean Hannity may have been right, and Sarah Carter and so many of us, Greg Jarrett, because we have pointed out FISA abuses, lying to FISA court judges, omissions by lying to FISA court judges, Hillary Clinton's crimes, the dual justice system in this country, one for Christian Saucier, one for Hillary, fixing investigations, and everything else associated with this. And that has been our point the entire time, Congressman. How do we get to the bottom of this now?
And they fight tooth and nail to provide the American people the truth about activities. I mean, Rosenstein, as Sarah said, even just last night, they're refusing to turn over these documents. People are saying that they're briefing certain members of Congress saying, oh, this is exactly what we'd want the FBI to do. Well, if that's the case, then why don't you show the American people the documents, show Congress so we can see how good a job you did. The fact that they're not willing to do that, that tells me that there were problems from the very beginning of this so-called collusion investigation. They won't show us the Papadopoulos stuff. They won't show us the information about Halper. And you got to ask yourself, why won't they come clean with Congress?
Last word tonight, Sarah Carter.
Absolutely. What was the scope of all of this? I think what we're seeing, Sean, and I've said this over and over again, is just one small portion of massive abuse. And the American people deserve the truth because our country relies on the foundation that we built ourselves upon. And it's not meant for spying. It's not meant for weaponizing the intelligence community. Something has to be done here, and Congress has to fight even harder to get those answers.
This is the biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal in our history. You watch everything we so far have told you, it's now coming true. Sadly, if we don't get this under control, it is horrific to the future of law and order in this country. Equal justice under the law, equal application under the law, the Constitution, which is the bedrock foundation of all of our laws, Fourth Amendment protections. When we come back, Ed Henry on the president's upcoming trip to the G7 summit in Canada. New details. It's all happening next Tuesday in Singapore. And by the way, we will be there. And we'll talk about it with Daniel Hoffman and Dr. Gorka. Busy news night. Stay with us.
Into your local Mitsubishi Motors dealer for our award-winning line of vehicles. Exciting offers end July 5th.
All right, before we get to a report from our own Ed Henry, I want to be very clear here what the article is about. The New York Times reporting about the DOJ seizing a reporter's phone. I misspoke, said the Mueller investigation. This is the DOJ. Now, we're going to have a lot more about this, but one thing we are learning here is that a part of it covered years' worth of reporting and information and communications with this particular reporter. And apparently this reporter had had a previous 3-year relationship with the Senate Intelligence Committee's former director of security, but said that was never a source. The standard, the bar legally is so high to get all of that information. This should be troubling to anybody that has sources, because there are all sorts of people that are sources for myself and our news division and so many other people. You got to protect those. But, of course, leaking has to stop, too. But this is a real problem to me. All right, President Trump, 2 major upcoming summits. And not only does he have the summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un next week, but he also has the G7 summit. That's in Canada. That starts tomorrow in Washington. With all the details, Fox News chief national correspondent Ed Henry. Ed, this is a pretty big story that just broke with the Times. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it.
Yeah, Sean, I mean, look, you talk about leaks as something the president's railed against. Think back to the Obama administration. James Rosen had records gone through. There were actually more leak investigations under the Obama administration than this current administration. So there's going to be a lot of backlash about this reporter's records going through. But that is breaking as the president, as you say, is about to engage in a very busy few days of diplomacy coming up for the president, which is a big reason why he keeps lashing out
Great
at
relationship
the Mueller probe.
with. He doesn't have the best relationship with the DOJ.
No, not at all. And it's the DOJ that was leading this investigation that you mentioned of this reporter. And he's been frustrated with the leadership over there with Attorney General Sessions. Absolutely. The president also, though, lashing out today again at Robert Mueller, calling the investigation a witch hunt and tweeting that it's a distraction from his weekend trip to the G7 summit in Canada that you mentioned, as well as the mission to Singapore for the North Korea summit. The president really seems to be relishing the idea that he's going to be sparring at the G7 with traditional allies like the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the French President Emmanuel Macron, tweeting, quote, "Please tell Prime Minister Trudeau and President Macron that they are charging the U.S. massive tariffs and create non-monetary barriers. The EU trade surplus with the U.S. is $151 billion, and Canada keeps our farmers and others out. Look forward to seeing them tomorrow." Now, interesting, we've just learned the last couple of moments, Sean, the president's going to be leaving Canada earlier on Saturday than expected to get to Singapore sooner to get ready for the North Korea summit, meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister today, who praised the president for bringing a fresh approach. In contrast, the media has given the president very little credit for bringing this peace process further than any of his predecessors. Critics pointing out it'll be very hard to get North Korea to denuclearize, which is why the president again lowered expectations today, reminded the media one meeting will not end years of tension. The president was also bullish on the chances for success, saying he has hopes that Kim Jong-un will eventually visit the White House, maybe even Mar-a-Lago, but stressed he will walk from the table if Kim does not agree to denuclearize. Listen.
I really believe that we have the potential to do something incredible for the world. So I am totally prepared to walk. It could happen. Maybe it won't be necessary. I hope it won't be necessary to walk.
Now, the president added he and Kim may sign an agreement to finally end the Korean War after decades, and we'd like to eventually see the U.S. and North Korea normalize their relations, actually have ambassadors back and forth to open up diplomatic relations. A lot of big meetings ahead, Sean.
All right. Thanks, Ed Henry. Tonight in Washington, here with reaction to Ed's report, former Deputy Assistant to the President, Fox News National Security Strategist, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, and retired CIA Senior Intelligence Officer, Fox News contributor Danielle Hoffman. I'm proud to announce that both of them will be with this program in Singapore. Sarah Carter will be there as well as, of course, the IG report 2 days after the Singapore summit. A lot of ground to cover tonight. Let's start with you, Danielle Hoffman, and the president showing strength. I'll walk away anytime. It's right out of the art of the deal. Doesn't surprise me. And I believe and know him well enough to know he absolutely would walk away in 4 seconds.
Yeah, and I think he's also doing the right thing by managing expectations. He's dealing with decades of failed policy, from which we've learned a lot. You know, we've talked a lot about the sunshine policy. That was more like moonshine policy for North Korea. At the end of that 10-year period, they'd taken $3 billion from South Korea and almost $2 billion from China, increased their nuclear program significantly. And we hadn't denuclearized them, taken really many steps to denuclearize the peninsula. The president's taken on board all of those lessons learned from the past, and I think he's really well prepared to go forward with a really bold strategy for dealing with this challenge that we face. I think the challenge will be dealing with some of the other countries from the six-party talks, like Russia and China, who are meddling and not always helpful, certainly on the part of Russia, to solving the crisis.
Well, you know something? The world would be a lot better off if we don't have Kim Jong-un and the Korean Peninsula threatened by North Korea. And ending the Korean War, Dr. Gorka, seems to me to be a pretty good idea and would be good for the world. And that we have confirmed that Kim Jong-un will talk about complete denuclearization of his regime. Good for the world.
After 65 years, absolutely. Just the absurdity that this war is still really, according to the lack of a peace treaty, in effect. It's just a ceasefire. So, yeah, let's do it. Let's go there. Let's denuclearize the peninsula. This isn't a dictatorship that's going to fall tomorrow. We're not going to solve all of the peninsula's problems. But if anybody can end the war, if anybody can denuclearize